R2 unit of yours seems a bit beat up. You want a new one? Not on your life. That little droid and I have been through a lot together.
Hello there. Ever since the first Star Wars movie, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, we always knew that the Rebellion was a very wide and very diverse group of individuals scattering throughout the entirety of the galaxy of the Star Wars universe. With literally dozens, if not possibly hundreds of different planets supporting the Rebel cause, from Corellia to Teardrop Base to Dalistan to Dantar to Animar and Obas and literally everywhere in between. There were literally dozens upon dozens of planets throughout the entirety of the Star Wars universe that had multitudes of rebel forces, that had multitudes of rebel cells, that had multitudes of individuals that were helping the Alliance in every way, shape, and form, and were solely against the Empire. But first, as always, we do a little bit of a breakdown, and we start off with the very first ship on this list, which is the most important ship in the entirety of the Rebel Alliance Navy, and that is, of course, the X-Wing. One of the most important ships in the entirety of the Star Wars universe, created by Incom Corporation, and with many, many models throughout the entirety of the Star Wars universe. The B-Class, the Patrol X-Wing, the T-Series, the T-65B, the exterior variants 1 and 2, T-65C, T-70, and the T-85. Each and every variant of the X-Wing is probably... They have no real actual differentials, but they are probably the most important ships in the entirety of the Rebel Alliance. I dare you to say anything less of that. The X-Wing itself was extremely simple. The cockpit, the 4 actual S-foils, the 4 laser cannons, and the proton torpedo launcher with a pilot and an astromech droid, easily making it one of the most important and one of the simplest ships in the entirety of the Alliance Navy, and also one of the most important given the fact that the X-Wing had its own hyperdrive, which allowed an entire squad of X-Wings to jump right into battle, destroy whatever they needed to destroy, do guerrilla hit-and-run tactics, and then bail out immediately as soon as things got messy. And along with the X-Wings themselves, we also have the extremely important pilots that flew those X-Wings into battle. We have Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles, which both participated in the first Death Star run, and Wedge Antilles also destroyed the second Death Star. We have Biggs Darklighter, Porkins, Dreas, and many, many other individuals that flew these X-Wings and were star pilots in their own right. And along with the X-Wing, we also have the Y-Wing. The Y-Wing was an extremely important tool throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars and was also extremely important during the Galactic Civil War, and it was used all the way time from 22, 21 BBY, all the way until the time of the new First Order. Now, to be real with you, the entirety of the Y-Wing Starfighter was breaking down to its core materials. All the heavy armor from the Clone Wars was stripped down, leaving only a handful of materials left, and leaving the hyperdrive as well as the cockpit and the astromech droid because they didn't have that many people to control the gunner spot. The simple idea of the Y-Wing was extremely similar to the X-Wing, with both squadrons going straight into battle. Y-Wings take out the shields, X-Wings destroy whatever they were looking at, and then they bailed out of there before the Empire could show up or before they could raise their shields up again. And along with the X-Wing, the Y-Wing Starfighters also had their very own individual pilots that served throughout the entirety of the Galactic Civil War, like John Vander, who was the Gold Leader Squadron during the Battle of Yavin, Keon Farlander, who survived the Battle of Yavin and became a Jedi Knight, Davish Krail, and Horton Salm, who became extremely top-notch Y-Wing starfighters, with Horton Salm becoming the New Republic's top Y-Wing pilot. Which also included, you guessed it, Luke Skywalker, who piloted a Y-Wing starfighter during the 1978 Star Wars Holiday Special, which we still do not talk about. Now, the next ship we have to talk about in the actual Alliance Navy itself is the legendary A-Wing, a prototype starfighter that was created specifically for the Rebellion and could only be piloted by the greatest pilots in the entire history of the Rebel Alliance itself. Now, the A-Wing itself was conceived as a fast but fragile interceptor of the Rebel Alliance, conceived for high-speed surgical strikes, deep reconnaissance missions, escort fighter duty, literally everything you can imagine. The thing about this ship was simply the fact that the actual pilot itself had to rely on their own instincts and their own ingenuity, given the fact that the ship did not have an astromech port or an astromech droid to take control of all sensors in case of an emergency. This, of course, often led to many individuals who didn't know how to fly the A-Wing, or many individuals who were experienced at piloting starfighters to begin with, to have high casualties. Unfortunately, some individuals were not really capable of actually flying these starfighters, given how advanced they were and how fast they were, and people didn't have the ingenuity or instincts to actually pilot them. but some other individuals like Green Squadron managed to fly these things so perfectly and so accurately that they were considered to be some of the best pilots in the entirety of the Rebellion. And of course, finishing up the final starfighter of the Rebel Alliance is the B-Wing Heavy Bomber, which was an insane starfighter to begin with from head to toe. Now, the B-Wing itself was extremely odd, considering the fact that the entirety of the main command pod itself had a weird gyroscope function which allowed the entirety of the wing of the starfighter rotate around in a gyroscope fashion, allowing it to stay on target and avoid every single blast coming straight at it. In fact, the B-Wing itself was considered to be the Reaper of the blockade and the Reaper of all capital ships, with an armament system that was so insane that it had multiple variations of ion cannons, laser cannons, auto blasters, proton torpedoes, and even a laser-guided bomb, as well as a composite beam laser that could destroy capital ships in a single shot. And while there were a handful of B-Wings throughout the entirety of the Rebellion, the B-Wings were still considered to be some of the most powerful and some of the most destructive bombers in the entirety of the Rebel fleet, so of course they were considered to be some of the most powerful ships in the entirety of the galaxy. And with that, of course, we end the video with the starfighters. Maybe I'll go into the Empire starfighters later on down the line, but until then, I will see you guys later. May the Force be with you.